On today's episode of the ThriveMore podcast, I had the pleasure of interviewing Christy Freddo. Christy is going to go deep. She's going to talk about her previous professional life in corporate America that was making her absolutely miserable. She's going to talk about an abusive marriage she was in, and she's going to talk about her struggle with alcoholism and how she overcame that and how she got out of that destructive relationship and how she left corporate America and started her own business and bought a business and is an entrepreneur now. So this isn't the regular business podcast of, I left this job and I started this company and here we are. This woman changed her life and she did it almost all on her own and for the sake of her young child. You are going to really enjoy this, and I think it's going to move you too. Enjoy. Today I have Christy Freddo. On this episode, she is going to talk about a life mindset change. Christy's a certified coach, speaker, and author who's committed to helping people transform their lives and achieve personal growth based on her own remarkable transformation that began in 2011. And let me tell you, we're going to go deep into her story, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and her message is important. Christy shares profound insights, transformative strategies, and techniques that have helped numerous individuals navigate life's challenges and embrace their own personal growth. Through her own transformation journey, she offers a unique perspective and deep understanding of where people are coming from. She's the real deal. So without further ado, Christy, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Well, hello. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Christy, I was reading your story earlier in the week, and if we could, I'd like to start at the beginning because I think you have not an atypical, but a unique story, and your message needs to be heard because there are millions of people, that are probably going through something similar to what you've been through. And what's great is you've been there and you've come out the other side. And I think that's inspiring. So can you tell us about your journey and how it led you to start this best life mindset practice?
Absolutely. So in 2011, in the span of 6 months, I left a toxic job that was making me miserable. It was a high-paying, glamorous international job, but it made me completely miserable. I also got out of an abusive marriage, and I got sober after decades of hardcore drinking and being in denial about that. And within 2 years of making those changes, I had rebuilt my life into something truly amazing that I love. I had met the man that I would later marry and blend a beautiful family with. I had bought a spa, and it has been successful for the last 10 years and a complete blessing for our family. Has allowed me work-life balance to raise kids while getting to be fulfilled professionally. And I've gotten to do all this while being sober.
All right, we are going to have to rewind the tape because there's a whole lot right there to unpack, right? There's a whole lot. So one, congratulations on your sobriety and congratulations on really turning your life into what you deserve, the life you deserve to live. If we can go back to, because there are a lot of people that listen to this show and they're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur and going to business for themselves like you have, but they feel almost trapped in this great corporate job. When I say great, It pays well, it has a great title, great benefits, but it's not what they want to do, and it's not fulfilling, and it's not making them happy. In fact, it's making them miserable a lot of times. Let's just start maybe with your role and the job and what you were doing and why you said it was making you absolutely miserable. If you could speak to that.
So I was an international marketing director, and I traveled probably 2 weeks out of every month, if not more. I know there was one time where there were 11 weeks and I had been home 3 days in 11 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And then I had a baby in the middle of having that career and really missed seeing my kiddo. So that was really hard. I missed her first crawling was with the nanny. Her first steps were with the nanny. And it was just kind of heartbreaking. So that was one problem once she was born. And it was an environment where there was a lot of backstabbing, and it was just kind of a toxic environment overall. And it wasn't aligned with my values. It wasn't aligned with my authentic self and who I wanted to be. It was high paying. It had a great title. Everyone thought it sounded amazing. I mean, I'd been to 6 of 7 continents by the time I was 35 just from doing this job. Benefits were amazing. Everything about it. I mean, I loved the people that I worked with in Latin America. Like, they were great. But the corporate situation was tough for me, and it just did not align with my values. So I was out of sync with my authentic self, and that was making me miserable. And what I really wanted, and later realized after I left and started this daily prayer and affirmation, that I would find something. I knew that being an entrepreneur was something I wanted to do, but it was also something I was a little bit scared to do. And I had this daily focus of, whatever I do, please just let it, whatever I do next, support me and my child, because I was now a single mom, be something where I can align with my core values and not ever be put in a position where I have to make a decision that does not align with my values or my ethics, and be something where I can control my schedule enough to be present in her life again. And that was my criteria. That was what I was really looking for. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what kind of business I would want to buy. I didn't know if I would really be brave enough to, as a single mom with one income and no child support at that point, be able to take that leap. But that was my criteria as I started looking. And it's funny because I did get distracted along the way. Like, I knew those were the 3 things I was looking for. And along the way, I got approached by a headhunter who said, I'm representing the premier magazine in Dallas, and we want you to come interview to possibly start a new TV station that would be branded with this magazine. And I thought that this is the best opportunity I've ever heard of. Nothing could be cooler or sound better or be more amazing or fun or, whatever. And I got completely sucked into that, ended up accepting that position, was so excited. And on Christmas Eve day, I had not started the job yet. It was going to start on the 2nd. The owner called me and said, "We've hit a glitch and we have to rescind the offer." And I thought, what? And never mind the fact I'd just gone and picked up a brand new car at Lexus and, that day and whatnot. And it was Christmas Eve. And so the next day I woke up and realized, you know what? This is actually a blessing in disguise. This is putting me back on the right path, because I got distracted from wanting to become an entrepreneur and got, the shiny things distracted me again, a big title, fancy job to tell people about, something that would really add to my achievements, those kinds of things that was appealing to all these different parts of my ego, but not my authentic self. There was no way I was going to have time in that new position to spend time with my kiddo. I mean, there was no way, right? It was going to be essentially recreating what I had had before that had made me miserable. And so on the 2nd of January, instead of starting that job, I called a business broker. And by March 1st, I was in my actual spa. My new business.
That's great. So many times we think if we change, we go across the street to a different job that's similar, it's going to be totally different. And what we find is we're in the same exact life, same exact hamster wheel, just with a different sign above the door that we walk through every morning, and it's so easy to fall into that trap.
So easy.
Yeah.
And looking back, I can't believe that I did, because I was so laser focused on those 3 things, right? That I would be able to have my values and my work-life balance and all of these things. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, this is amazing. It sounds so fantastic. And I jumped right in. So I was, I'm really thankful that worked out that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we do get trapped in this shiny object syndrome, and we always have our goals. And then it's easy to get distracted. But if we can go back just a little step, and I want to just get personal here, because you said that you'd gotten sober. Did you get sober before you left the abusive relationship, or did that happen later? Like, because sometimes I know it's chicken or the egg. Like, I need to get sober so I can get clear mind and clear state of mind and get out of this. What was the timing on that?
So I was extremely unhappy prior to making those changes and didn't really know why. I was sort of in denial about all of the things, because everyone kept telling me, like, you're so lucky. I mean, I would do anything to have this career like you have. And so then I would feel like, well, I'm just being an ingrate. I couldn't understand that I was out of whack with my authentic self. And that was why I was having just such a bad time with it. And I was in complete denial that I was in an abusive marriage somehow. I was just like, he has issues. And I very much felt that when you get married, you're in it forever. Like that's the commitment you make, for better or worse. You stick by that person. Yes, he had issues, but that's that. And the alcoholism, I definitely was in denial. I was like, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm the party. Once I bring the fun, I'm the one. The party starts when I get there. Like in no way did I really think I was an alcoholic. So the order was I left the job because I knew that was completely messing up a lot of things in my life. There was no way to have any work-life balance. And I felt like maybe I was drinking more because of that job making me unhappy or whatnot.
Sure.
And so I left and found out that was definitely not the case and realized how dependent I was on alcohol, even without having late night fun dinners with, great colleagues and whatnot. I was still drinking just by myself at night and realized it was really interfering with everything. And so I started thinking about doing something about that, but didn't really want to. So I started negotiating with myself. Like, what if I just drink on weekends? What if I just drink one bottle of wine instead of 2 bottles of wine at night? Tried all these different things and none of them worked, right? Which is very typical of the change cycle when someone tries to make a new change, right? You try to keep getting back to what's miserable because it might be miserable, but it's familiar. And so I didn't right away make that change. The change that came after the job situation was I decided I had a situation that I guess I would say was an actual wake-up call. In the middle of the night one night, I was awakened by my husband's full weight on me, hitting me while I was asleep and yelling at me and telling me he was going to kill me and I was a terrible person. And I started to try to grab for my phone on the nightstand, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you going to try to call the police? Are you going to call the police? Is that what's going to happen here? You're going to have Riley's dad hauled off in front of her? Is that the kind of mom you are?" "Yeah, that is the kind of mom you are. That sounds typical," and, whatnot. And I never got the phone, obviously. And I realized in that moment, if my child came in, I would not be able to protect her, and that it was a completely volatile situation and that I had no way of, protecting her or doing anything. And I didn't know what would have happened. And that was terrifying. And that at that moment superseded anything I had ever believed about marriage being a lifetime commitment. And so the next day I woke up, I called the marriage counselor and who knew that this abuse was going on, even though we never really referred to it as abuse exactly. And she helped me make a plan and get out of that situation that very next day. And so, that was something that I had to do for my kiddo. And then very shortly after that, I realized I have to face that I'm an alcoholic and that I'm not present with my child. And she has one parent and I need to be the best parent I can be. And so at that point, I decided the day after Thanksgiving to check myself into an outpatient program for 8 weeks. And went through that rehab and was able to finally get sober and live a real life for once after many years of drinking too much.
I'm grateful that you shared that story because so many people listening to this are likely struggling with that too. And I have found that some of the highest achievers, people that put the most stress on themselves and pressure on themselves to perform, self-medicate in one way or the other, right? In one way or the other with something. And it's your story and stories like yours that I think shed light on it so that we do talk about it because it's not talked about often. And just like you said, no, it's just a business dinner. What's a fourth drink? Well, we already finished that bottle of wine. Let's just open another bottle of wine. It's so easy. I've been there, done that. I just understand how easy it is to go down that slippery slope. And there are so many social validations for the behavior that nobody's calling it out because it's being validated and even rewarded at times, which is crazy but true. So congratulations on that. That's not an easy thing. And obviously your life is so much better because of it.
Oh, it's so much better. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. That's the best answer you could get right there. All right. So what drove you and with all of that, which was just amazing. I mean, job you hated, an abusive marriage, and struggling with alcohol, and you, in a pretty short order, went through all that, which is not usual. Usually it's a very long cycle and starts and stops, and I'm out, but I'm back in, and all that. And you seem to really have made up your mind that I'm going to make a life change. I'm going to change this for my daughter. I'm going to change this for myself. So what drove you to start to help others? Because I'm sure we all know that you have to help yourself before you can fill your own cup, before you can actually start helping others. So was it getting sober? Was it buying the business? Like, when did you start saying, hey, I want to, in my personal mission, start to help other people too?
So it's a funny thing when you go through things like being an alcoholic, being in an abusive marriage, there's such a stigma that comes with that. And I was very ashamed. And all I could think was, I am supposed to be, as far as anyone knows, this successful person in a happy marriage, strong, successful executive. Like, people like that don't have these kinds of problems. So I don't want to tell people that I have these kinds of problems. And so
Sure.
I didn't tell a soul. I didn't tell anyone what was going on. So I went through all of this by myself without any support or anyone knowing what was going on. And because I went through it alone, I had to find my own support and my own resources. And so I stumbled upon all of these different strategies that helped me get through and stay sober, for example, get through not knowing what I was going to do next professionally and find what I was going to do next professionally. So I got into meditation. I got into manifesting. I got into positive affirmations and started all of these different things, right? Changing habits, replacing old habits with new habits, just doing all of these different things, changing my mindset completely to be positive. And, when I had a negative thought, releasing that and replacing it immediately with a positive thought or a thought of gratitude. So I had to do all these things for myself. So I've been sitting on these strategies this whole time and haven't shared them with anyone because I was too scared to share the ugly parts, the embarrassing parts. So for the last, 10 years, longer than that, really, I sat on this story of what really happened and told people. I reinvented myself. I remarried. I moved. And I told people, at parties, oh, I just don't drink. People in my family drink a lot. And I just don't drink a lot because of that, which is true that people in my family love to drink and party, but it's also true I'm an alcoholic, but I never told people that
Sure.
part. And,
Sure.
why are, what happened with, your daughter's father? Oh, it just didn't work out and, whatnot, right? I never told anybody the actual story. So even though I was living my best life in so many ways and had accomplished exactly what I wanted to when I set out to say, I want to have work-life balance, keep my values in place and be able to support my kiddo, I also was totally out of whack again with my authentic self for all of those years, in the sense that I wasn't telling the truth essentially about who I was completely and fully. And so very recently, over the last year, in a moment of meditation, I realized that I wanted to tell this story to help other people, and that I wanted to work with other people and coach people to make changes big and small, because I have these strategies that I can share. And if I can overcome and change those kinds of big, extreme things, I can certainly help people with smaller or medium-sized situations they have that they want to change. And so that is why I became a transformative life coach. And it's funny too, during those meditations, I started to see what this ebook would look like. I started to see I should write these stories down and how they played out and what made me make these changes and the strategies that I used for each thing that I overcame and the strategies I used to rebuild. And once I saw that in the meditation and once it just became clear in my mind, I sat down to write the book and I wrote it in less than a week. And it was so easy. It flowed out like as if it was something fun I was doing for the day, a hobby, not something that you would think of as a task or something that I needed to do or had to do. It was a total passion project. And that was when I knew this is what I want to do. I'm going to work with people. And I mean, it is interesting, right, to do that in addition to having a successful business, but at the same time, another successful business. But at the same time, it's something that I felt like I have to do. It's only right to share that story to be able to possibly help other people and destigmatize in some small way those things. And so here I am.
We also, I think in this, a lot of cultures, shame plays a big role. And we're taught that from a very young age. We're unfortunately taught, shame and don't do this and don't do that. And that's bad because, and people don't like it when you do this. And that shame stays with us. I'm not sure if you've read any Brene Brown, but
Oh,
she's,
yeah.
a great author. Yeah. Just, she's the one that probably opened my eyes most to just how much shame is used in our culture. And, I think, there's good pressure on ourselves that we can put, and there's positive pressure, but shame is there's nothing positive about it. It's just, it's a very negative emotion, and mostly internally created, right? It's almost all internally created, that the rest of the world doesn't see it when you're experiencing or feel shame, but it feels like everyone can see it. Everyone knows I'm wearing this cloak of shame right now, but they don't. But that's our internal dialogue. And it sounds like you went through some of that as well.
And then held on to it for so many years. My husband of 9 years didn't know so many things about what happened and what transpired. And when he read the ebook, he asked me all these questions, and he was like, I cannot believe that all of this happened. I'm so sorry. And my best friends, read the book and like took screenshots because it's an ebook, right, on their phone, and asked me, like, went through and asked questions, like, well, what was this? And this happened and I can't believe it. And, so nobody in my family, friends, husband, I mean, that's how much shame I felt that I did not tell a soul for over a decade. And now I'm telling the story everywhere and on podcasts. And now if you Google me, these podcasts will come up that start with Christy Freddo, an alcoholic in an abusive relationship. And it kind of makes me laugh because it's so opposite of how hard I kept this a secret, and how I guarded the story with my life for all of those years and spun it as
Yeah.
something completely different.
Well, what you've done is you've empowered yourself. You've taken the power back. You took the power away from, those dark shadows and the shame. And when you do that, nothing can stop you. Nothing can stop you. So, kudos for that. So what is, and of course, no names by any means, but clients you work with now in your coaching practice that may be going through some of these same challenges, or a listener right now who may be going through a similar challenge or one of these challenges, what type of advice do you give them? And I'm sure that varies by person and by situation, but generally speaking, what is some of the advice that you offer to somebody who is at this tipping point in their life where they need to make a change, but they haven't for so long?
Well, one of the most important things is it's never too early and it's never too late to make a change if you feel like you are not in alignment with your authentic self and you're not completely fulfilled. And it's easier to make those changes than people think. It seems insurmountable. Like you said earlier, you feel trapped sometimes, like there's no way to make a change, but there is a way to make a change. It's really pretty simple. If you can change your thoughts, change what's going through your mind, change your mindset, you can change your life. And it's not all that complicated. It's really pretty simple. The only thing that you have to be able to do is commit to being consistent and working on it every single day. And that's really it. And I mean, that's what I did. And I was able to make changes and make them fast and completely reinvent myself. And anyone can do that by following those types of strategies. It's as simple as saying, I'm committing to 100% positive mindset 100% of the time. And that's what I'm going to strive for. And if I have a negative thought, I'm going to acknowledge it, I'm going to release it, and I'm going to replace it with a positive thought or gratitude. And it's as easy as figuring out, what I might want to do in the future, even if it's as simple as figuring out what those parameters are or that criteria without knowing exactly what it looks like, and focusing on those things like I did when it came to becoming an entrepreneur. And it's so much easier, right? Like it's so much easier than you think it is. I'm not saying it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's a lot easier than people think. And I hate that it holds people back. So when I talk to people and they're like, but I can't make that change. Why can't you make that change? Really think about it. And usually it's just fear. It's just fear. There's no real reason people can't make most changes. And you've got to be creative, to get out of some of the different situations that you're in. Like, you might have to save a little bit of money. to be able to get out of your career so you have time to figure out what you want to do next and not just jump from one thing to the next thing. I mean, you have to put in a little bit of effort, but at the end of the day, it's all mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, where do you see most people, because what you just said is very easy to understand. And I would just challenge the fact that so many people don't change, right? They stay stuck. And so when you're coaching your clients, where do you see them get stuck most? And how do you get them to move out of that place of helplessness? Because I've talked with a lot of people and worked with a lot of people, and just like you said, my situation's different. I appreciate that you've done this, but mine is different than yours, and you wouldn't quite understand, and it's not that easy for me. I'm sure you hear all this. So how do you help those people become unstuck?
Well, I think the funny thing is when you ask people what's holding you back, a lot of times they don't really know. The first answers they give you are excuses, right? And it
Hmm.
always comes down to some deep-seated fear that is, things like I'm worried about what people will think.
Hmm.
I'm worried that I won't, be able to replace this income with the same income, these different types of things. But once somebody really decides to change, it's that cycle starts, right? So it's like the first thing is I'm so excited. I am going to make all of these great changes. I'm going into this new world. Like it's like euphoria, right? And then, you talk to them again a week later and they're like, I don't know. I'm second guessing this. And then there's like imposter syndrome in some cases and whatnot.
Sure.
And it's always that they start rationalizing that whatever they had before isn't so bad. Whatever they had before, whatever situation that was, they start to glamorize it a little bit like, well, I mean, there were these things that were good about it. It was, I'm making a lot of money. I don't know that it's really makes sense to make a change that big. Maybe I just need to be more grateful for what I have. And there's a lot of rationalizing and whatnot, right? And then in some cases, people even give up and go back to whatever it is that they originally wanted to change, right? So people always get stuck right after that euphoria when the reality of it starts to set in and the uncomfortableness of something different and of making changes. And sometimes it's like they tell people about the change they're going to make, and then they hear, negative feedback. They hear mocking almost in some cases, and they second guess themselves. It puts them right back in that same box. So it's a cycle. And sometimes people have to cycle through it a few times.
Yeah. I almost like the like the grief cycle, right? Like you can't just go through it once. You're like, I'm done. You always go back, and you go back to the middle, go back to the beginning, and bargaining and anger and finally resolution. But you have to go through that many times. How has so you made obviously a professional change, but in the midst of that, two big personal changes, two big relationship and health changes. How did that impact your professional acumen, your professional ability in this new business? I'm sure only in positive ways, but I would just love to know, kind of granularly how that you saw these positive changes start to really impact your professional life.
Well, obviously, you're going to do a lot better with business when you're not hungover every day and you're not tired every
Sure.
day from staying. I mean, like, that's a pretty obvious one, right?
Yeah.
And when you're not distracted by what's going on at home and you're not constantly worried
Hmm.
about your child and their safety, it's going to make a huge difference. I bought the spa whenever I was still a single mom. So I had a lot of distractions at that point because there's a lot that you have to do to manage, a kiddo's life in addition to owning a business. But I was able, because it was my own business, to work around any of those situations, which was also really good. So there were challenges because it was like being a single mom and whatnot. But what was a really great surprise was not so much pertaining to the personal changes that I made, but the professional changes, how much of what I had done before transferred over to owning my own business. And I
Yep.
think people don't realize that too. When they go to make a change to be an entrepreneur or they're a little bit scared, so much of that corporate knowledge can transfer. I mean, so in my business, we would go down to our countries in Latin America quarterly and do quarterly reviews. We would do a business plan once a year and do, projections for, how they were going to get to certain numbers, what those numbers look like, what metrics fed up into those numbers, those kinds of things. And running your own business is exactly the same thing, but on steroids. So it was really nice to know that those things translated. Although there were a lot of things that did not translate and that I was not prepared for, like having a business with a facility, a brick and mortar, things happen. Washing machines and dryers break that you have to wash
Sure.
cows all the time at a spa. And, bathrooms break. And, there are a lot of unforeseen things that you have to learn and whatnot. But the things that came over from corporate America were kind of astounding. I was more prepared to own my own business than I would have ever imagined.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that, because I personally also spent 25 years in corporate America, and I don't begrudge it. I think so many people, really, really have disdain for it. I don't want to go back, but you're right. So many of those skills, the persuasion, the influence, the teamwork and collaboration, leadership, that all goes right into your own business. And now you're building something for yourself using those skills that you learned, quite frankly, on someone else's dime. And I think that I see a lot of very successful entrepreneurs embrace what they learned in corporate America and apply it to their own business, and they're out of the gates right away, because you're right. There is a familiarity to it. But I love what you said. But when you own your own business, especially brick and mortar, you don't get to decide when the washing machine works and when it doesn't, or when this door is broken or not. Like it's almost like a child. It kind of tells you what it needs when it needs it, and it's not for you to decide. And so you have to be ready for that. And I think that is probably one of the surprises. We're in corporate America, I'll get to that tomorrow, or I'll get to that next week. And in a small business, no, you need to attend to that right now. I'm sure you've probably had a similar experience.
Absolutely. But you also have the flexibility to say, I'm going to put this off for a week because I have my child's field trip and I want to go on that instead. That's what's really important. And you don't have that in corporate America most of the time. So
100%.
It's a trade-off, right?
Yeah. Yeah. As everything in life. Walk me through, if you could. So you write this ebook, and you have two resources. You have the ebook, and then you also have, I think, what you call the Reinvention Roadmap. And can you speak to both of those? You talked about the ebook, which was great, and it just poured out of you. And but I guess what I'm trying to understand is how do you want that ebook to serve others? And then also talk about the Reinvention Roadmap, if you could.
So the ebook goes pretty deep into some of my actual stories and the learnings that came from those events. And it also shares the strategies and how I came upon those strategies, right? That helped me, and very specific examples of how those events and those strategies were able to transform into something amazing, right? So my whole life at this point since making those changes has been taking obstacles and making those stepping stones to move forward, reframing the negative events that have happened at that time or since, and making them into something new and wonderful. So that's what the book is about. It tells you how you can make those changes, big or small. It walks you through steps and daily practices. And if you're not sure about something, for example, meditation is one of the chapters. And I start that chapter with, I know a lot of you are wanting to skip this chapter because you don't want to meditate and you've tried it before and you don't like it. And you don't think it's for you and it's hard. And I understand all of that because I came from that place, but there are all these different kinds of meditation and people don't realize that. And there's one for you and there's no right way or wrong way. And if you try it, you can have benefits to, cure your anxiety. You can help your depression. You can see clearly and get the clutter out so that you can figure out what you do want to do next and how you want to do it. And all of these different, benefits to it if you can just sit down and do it. And, meditation is a practice, and it's a practice for a reason. You're never going to be perfect at it. So examples like that, right? That I struggled with it too, but these are the benefits that I got, and here's how you could learn to actually do it. And I just use meditation as one example. So that's what the ebook is really about. It goes through every single strategy that I had to learn on my own because I was doing it all by myself. And the Reinvention Roadmap is a little bit different in the sense that it is a very specific guided journey that helps you look at your life as it is today, figure out where you're living authentically and in alignment with your core values, and where you're fulfilled and where you're not. And then it helps you figure out why you're not and how you would get to a place where you would be fulfilled, and then helps you sort of map that out so that you can start taking actions.
You spoke to core values. On this podcast, we've talked a lot about values and value systems, especially how they apply to business, but of course, how they apply to your life. And one thing that I've learned probably in the last 5 years is, I wish I would have learned it earlier, is when you have your core values right, when you have your value system right, you have your 5 values, 6 values, 3 values, whatever that is, decisions get really easy. The consequences may be tough, right? Hey, this relationship is not serving me. I'm going to have to get out of this relationship. Well, there's going to be a lot of work after that, making that decision. The consequences are tough, but the decisions are easy because we just bump up the questions against our value system and say, well, what do I believe? What is in my heart? Well, that's the answer. Again, maybe a tough road ahead of that, but to answer the question becomes fairly easy. In business, it seems to be the same way. And it sounds like that's really the decoder ring you've used for your life and setting your life on this new path is your value system.
Absolutely. And you can have all of the success in the world. I mean, my life looked amazing on paper, but at the end of the day, I was miserable because I was not in alignment with my core values and my authentic self. And no matter what you have, what level of success or wealth or anything that you reach, if you're not in alignment, you'll never feel right. It'll just never feel good. You'll never be completely fulfilled. And that's what makes it tricky, right? Because when your life looks good on paper, it's hard to really understand what's wrong. Why am I not happy?
Yep. Yeah. Very true. Very true. So the listeners know I'm an avid reader, and I can only imagine going through the changes that you went through and all of the personal growth and professional growth that you've experienced. You did a lot of reading to get there. Is there one book, I'm sure there are many, but is there one book that you would recommend that if somebody is on, at this crux in their life and they're ready to make some changes, regardless of the area, is there one book that you could recommend that really helped you that you think may help the listeners?
I think anything by Dr. Caroline Leaf is worth reading.
Okay.
Dr. Caroline Leaf is, I feel like, a hidden treasure. Most people have not heard of her. She's a neuroscientist and a Christian, which gives her a very interesting viewpoint on neuroplasticity. And one of the things that she talks about is, so she has one book called Clean Up Your Mental Mess, which is great, and another one called Turn on Your Brain. They're both excellent if you're in this sort of situation because they help you get clarity around your thoughts. And so she walks through how, what I was saying before, that like if you can change your mindset, you can change your life. She walks through how you can change your mindset. She talks about how neurotransmitters, signals are constantly firing in your brain, and you have a program that's probably negative if you haven't worked on it going through your brain right now. And so you have to work on that program. And that's kind of the clean up your mental mess part, right? And she talks about every thought that you have, everything that you say, even if you're being sarcastic, like, oh, I'm a real winner, or, I'm, whatever type thing that you're saying is creative. Every thought is creative. Every word is creative. And she even talks about how God spoke the world into existence with words, right? And so that's how powerful words are, because you're created in his image, and therefore your words are creative. And so you have to be super careful with your words. And so she is just one that helps you realize there is scientific evidence behind mindset changes. And that makes you want to go change your mindset, because otherwise people listen to it and they're like, oh, it's so woo-woo. This woman's talking about meditation and manifestation and affirmations and whatnot. But when you listen to her from a scientific standpoint, it's amazing when you realize, and one of the things she says is, every time you think, a neuron fires with whatever you're thinking or saying, and what fires wires. And that becomes your new thought process, your new program. And so it's very important to every single day work on that program reprogramming to positive thoughts.
Upgrade your software, upgrade your personal software.
Yes.
Yeah. Love it. Well, Christy, where can people find you? And I'm sure there'll be people that'll want to connect with you after this. And where can they find your ebook and then the Reinvention Roadmap? If you could just share those resources, and we'll of course put them in the show notes, but if you could just kind of reference where they can find those resources, and most importantly, get a hold of you.
So everything can be found on bestlifemindset.com. My email is on there also. So if anybody has any questions, thoughts, wants to bounce something off, please feel free to email me at any time. The Reinvention Roadmap is on the website, so you can get it for free there. The ebook is also on the website for $14.95. So those resources are available. We're also on Facebook and Instagram.
Great. Awesome. Well, I just want to go back and again, thank you for your not just authenticity, but your vulnerability of sharing your story and sharing your path. If more people would do that, I know the world would be a better place. And so I appreciate you and just you being so genuine and authentic.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much for tuning into the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any resources mentioned during the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. I'd also like to remind you to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, always remember to set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive.